Hi, my name is Lilly. I'm the director of Howard EcoWorks. My background is in watershed planning and restoration. I've got a 20-year career history. I've also served on the Ellicott City flood Workgroup from 2015 to 2018.
I'm Ron Peters. I've been coming to Ellicott City for over 50 years. I own 3 properties in the historic part of Ellicott City. Been part of the flood Workgroup for 3.5 years, and I'm currently on the Ellicott City board. I've been researching our flood problems for the last 3 years.
The Tiber Hudson watershed drains to the Patapsco through downtown Ellicott City. The watershed is 3.7 square miles and 21% impervious. That means 21% of the watershed doesn't have any ability to infiltrate stormwater runoff. Based on the impervious cover model, that shows that this watershed is impacted in terms of its ability to support aquatic life. Now, there have been a lot of studies done on the Tiber Hudson watershed. There have been several 2-stream corridor assessments, a retaining wall inspection report, 2 hydrologic and hydraulic studies. I did a watershed plan when I worked at the Center for Watershed Protection. The most important study that we have to date is done by a company called McCormick Taylor, and they did a hydrologic and hydraulic analysis of the entire watershed that we're going to be referencing throughout this video. It's important to note that most of this watershed has no current stormwater management in place, so a lot of the runoff is not managed at all by any facilities. According to the model conducted by McCormick and Taylor, we're looking to control 800 plus acre feet of water. So the goal, according to the McCormick-Taylor report, is to reduce the flood from the 100-year flood event to the 10-year flood event. According to this, what's called a hydrograph, we're looking to reduce the peak flow associated with the 100-year storm event. Now, it's important to note that the goal associated with all the projects proposed in that plan aren't to eliminate all the water. We're just to bring down the flows to what we call a 10-year storm event. Now, this McCormick and Taylor study report is also gives us other important information about the watershed. For example, if the watershed were all woods in good condition, downtown area would still flood. So we have a lot of challenges associated with this watershed that have to do with the topography and bedrock that make it really hard to control the water. So what we'd like to do now is to take you around some areas of the watershed. Hopefully you can experience firsthand through this video some of the real constrictions and limitations that we're facing and trying to deal with the flooding problem in Ellicott City.
During this tour, we're also going to show you where the cameras are located, installed back from January through May to capture the flood. This is the first location right here at the Ellicott City Color School at the intersection of South Rogers Avenue and Main Street. So we're going to show you pictures of what the current conditions look like, and we'll also be showing you pictures of what the flood looked like during the flood from these 12 different locations. This here is what I call the 108-84 pipe. The pipe used to be larger in diameter, 108 inches. In 1985 it got reduced down to 84 inches. The pipe was rusting out, so they put an insert in it. One of my tenants who lives right up the street was telling me that's how I knew it was 1985. He said he used to ride his bike in it, and they reduced the size. But this pipe is one of the restriction points up here, because it won't handle the volume of water coming the other part of West End. So the plan is to take this pipe out. There's like 600 feet of pipe. Take it all out. Open the channel up, make it more natural like it used to be 100 years ago. And then put a bridge over to allow more water to go underneath of the bridge. So that's part of the flood mitigation plan.
There's a lot of stormwater runoff that comes from hard surfaces like parking lots, sidewalks, rooftops. One thing that we don't think a lot about is the amount of runoff that comes from turf grass and lawns. These areas actually produce quite a bit of runoff. For example, if you're getting 95 or 99% runoff from a hard surface, from turf grass you could be getting anywhere from 40 to 60% runoff. And that's partly because the ground underneath is so compacted, and also because turf grass has a very shallow root system, so you don't get a lot of infiltration. Now this tool is called a penetrometer. This measures compaction of the soil. And if I push it into the ground, I can see and get a measurement about how compacted, or at what depth the compacted layer starts. So it's starting right about here. If I pull this out of the ground, it's at a depth of about 6 inches is where we have a compacted layer. So we're getting a lot of runoff from these turf areas as well. So Howard EcoWorks has a campaign called the Soak It Up campaign. This is funded by the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. It's a community engagement campaign to get the private residential community involved in stormwater solutions. We have a good example right here. This is in the West End area of Ellicott City. You can see this really eroded area behind me. And actually upstream or uphill of there's no development, no impervious surfaces or anything. It's just a really steep wooded hill slope that is draining out of a gully and causing the erosion in the back of this house and creating a lot of runoff and stormwater into the back of this home. So we have a project up here at the top of the hill that we're going to go check out now. The project here is, what we have is a swale, which is the kind of parabolic area in here, and then we have a berm that's going to contain the water. If we walk over here just slightly, you can see that there's a gully coming off the hill slope, and that's what's causing that eroded area down the slope and before it hits the house down there. So our project's going to capture the water, slow it down. It's going to pond a little bit in this area, and then it's going to overflow down there by the rocks. Now what's a little bit different about this project is that we tilled into the soil what's called biochar. And biochar is a charcoal-based product. It's a charcoal made from organic material, usually a hardwood tree. It has a very high pore density, so it holds a lot of water. It's also really good at removing contaminants and filtering the water of pollutants like nitrogen and phosphorus and heavy metals and bacteria. But what we hope to do by integrating it into this project is to get the water to soak in even more before it exits over the overflow. This biochar that we've integrated here is stuff that we have homemade in a kiln. It's burned from the top. It doesn't emit a lot of smoke because it's burned from the top. It creates like a vortex effect. And then you put the coals out when they're red hot before it becomes ash, and that's what allows it to have this very high pore density and to absorb water. And this is a commercial grade product that I have here that it can be purchased not anywhere locally, which is why we made ours homemade, but this is really good stuff.
This is shows Ellicott Mills Drive, where it got washed out in the 2018 storm. The corrugated pipe where the Hudson went through the pipe had collapsed, and then that caused the water, and we don't know why it collapsed. It could have been rusted out, could have been debris, vehicles got stuck in it, but then it washed the whole hill out in a matter of probably less than an hour. And that's when it started washing cars and dumpsters down the Court Avenue. So the plan is to put a 24-foot wide by 14-foot high box culvert in here now, a large culvert to allow that flow to go under the road and then put the road back over top. What they want to do is make the initial entrance to this culvert about the same size of the old pipe, so they don't allow a full flow of water to go down into the lower part of Main Street into Ellicott City until they get to clean out the Hudson Bend and hopefully open up where the buildings are to allow a full flow of water at that time. But they'll be able to knock out sections of the culvert to widen it up as they proceed with the lower construction and widening of the lower part of the stream channels. So as you can see, it's a large project. They originally thought this was going to be done by Thanksgiving, which was several weeks ago. You know, from what I'm seeing right now, well, maybe by May or June, maybe they'll have it done. But it's a large project. It shows what you run into when you start having to dig into granite bedrock to put in your beams that they've drilled into it. They had jackhammers in here. I mean, it's just, you don't know what you're going to run into in Ellicott City when you're building a project like this. This is the Hudson River running under Court Avenue. So if any of you saw some of the video footage from the 2018 flood, this is where the blue dumpster and all the cars piled up. So it's fairly wide. So we're going to walk down and show where the main restriction point is under Main Street. So that's where we're heading next. Here we are right at the arch culvert, I call it. So Main Street is right above us, just by the brewery, below Court Avenue. This is a major restriction point where the Hudson comes down and the water will not go underneath. It gets clogged up with debris, cars, pallets, dumpsters. And then once it clogs up here, the water runs out and over top of Lot E and down past the brewery into Main Street, and then it starts its travels down Main Street and picks up cars and washes them down Main Street to lower Main Street. So this is the major cause of all the flooding up at in front of Lapa Lapa, Sukasa, the brewery, Tersicles, because this clogs up. So the plan is to take this out and make a bridge, open this channel up wider so we can have the water flow unrestricted down to Lot D and on down to the Patapsco.
Okay, so my group with the READY program, we do a regular stream cleaning of pulling debris out of the channels, especially at constriction points like this, because we know that the blockages are one of the main problems associated with the flooding, or certainly a contributing factor. So we would come in here and pull out debris such as what you see right here. When we started this program several years ago, I used to be able to walk standing straight up through this entire arched culvert, and now over time there's so much sediment built up that now we have to stoop down when we're walking through this part. So this is a really significant problem.
Right here is where the Tiber River runs into the Hudson River. The Tiber comes underneath of Lot D through this pipe. The 3,000 cubic feet per second came down in 2018, and it won't fit through this pipe. So then it floods Lot D. So the plan is to take this pipe out, make the channel walls taller, deeper, keep the water out of Lot D, and that continue on down toward the buildings and toward the Pasco River.
So here we are now. We have the New Cut branch, the third major tributary that is entering below where the Tiber and the Hudson have come together. The New Cut has two major tributaries, the New Cut itself and the Autumn Hill branch. And they both meet upstream of here, and then it comes down and it meets the Tiber Hudson. Now all this material, all these boulders and rocks that you see in the middle here, these were not here before the 2018 flood. That flood brought all of this material, a large amount of this material down during that event. We know that the 2018 flood, the New Cut branch, carried almost twice as much water as it did in 2016. Now McCormick-Taylor did not find very many opportunities in this sub-watershed for retention projects. So there's a little bit disheartening because we know that there's twice as much water coming in 2018, which makes it even more of a challenge to retain water upstream.
So we're here at the Hudson and the New Cut intersection, and we learned from the USGS that there was almost 12,000 cubic feet per second at the 2018, the height of the 2018 storm. 6,500 or so coming down the New Cut, and another 6,000 coming down from the Hudson Tiber. So we have 12,000 cubic feet per second. The buildings, which we're going to be visiting next, will only allow about 2,000 cubic feet per second to go under the building. So we got 10,000 feet per second excess water coming down to where the buildings are, which are acting as a dam until they blow out. Going up the New Cut and the Autumn Hill, it's very restricted access. Part of the hill blew out right up there, which has to be fixed before they can reopen the road. And it's just access to build that the hill back is one thing. People talk about putting in tunnel bores to capture water. That would be another very difficult process. And if you only put one up here, well, now you're only going to capture water from the New Cut Autumn Hill. We still have over 6,000 cubic feet per second coming down from the New Cut Tiber. From the Tiber Hudson. And then no one's going to guarantee that you put in these tunnel bores, you're going to keep out all of the debris. What happens when the inlets to the tunnels clog up and the water continues down to Main Street and floods it again? So we're in the Hudson now, and you can see the Kaplan building behind me with the trees still lodged into it. Now remember, probably 80% of the trees have been taken out since the flood. They were underneath and on top. That building was rebuilt. Don Ruhr rebuilt it after the 16 flood with concrete block walls, reinforced. He said it'll never go anywhere. It's bulletproof. It lasted about 5 minutes. After the water got up 8.5 feet, will only go underneath of the building. It got up to 21.5 feet high here. If you look at the bars on the windows of the old bank building, the second set of bars, not the little ones, but that set, it was up to the top of those bars. So we measured it, 21.5 feet of water. That came up within like 15 minutes. It was up, and then once it did, it blew the wall out, went through these buildings, out into Main Street, and on down Main Street, washing cars and endangering people who were trapped in the buildings. They couldn't get out of the buildings. But the volume and velocity of the water right here is just unbelievable. How many cubic feet per second? I was telling you, that's only about 2,000 cubic feet per second will fit underneath for that building. We had 12,000 right here. So we need to open this channel up all the way to the river to get the water there unrestricted. Under the Kaplan building where we're at now, you can turn around and look at the cracks in the foundation walls where it was poured after the 16 flood, but you see what damage was done during the 18 flood. And you still see debris lodged up under the floor on the other side of the trees, still lodged up. The next adjoining building, you can see where part of the concrete can, that the concrete floor is hanging down. That's the Johnson building. And then all the rock and debris that's in the channel. And as we go farther down, you can see it gets restricted even farther, down by where Discoveries is, the Tiber Alley. The channel narrows. So even less water will go underneath of it. when we get down to Maryland Avenue, it's only about 1,700 cubic feet per second will fit under Maryland Avenue. And we started out with 12,000 behind us, so it's all going out into Main Street. So we need to take this channel, open it up wide.
A company called KCI did an inspection of all the retaining walls in Ellicott City. I think it was done in 2012. One of the concerns that have been raised is the condition of the walls that are holding up these structures. You can see over here behind me that this wall is very undermined. It's missing a lot of rocks at the bottom. There's a lot of voids and cracks in the wall. Part of the concern is that a lot of these walls are privately owned, and so they haven't been maintained over time. And these walls are supporting the structures, so we do have a great deal of concern about the conditions of these walls that haven't been maintained that are holding up these dilapidated structures now.
Right now we're underneath Discovery's down below Tiber Alley, looking down to Maryland Avenue behind me, and that's where the channel runs into the Patapsco. It's only about 17 feet wide, 8 feet high there, and I think about 1,700 cubic feet per second will fit underneath of that section there. So once whatever will fit under that, anything above that is going to flood out into Lower Main Street. That's why it's going to be impossible to stop all flooding on Lower Main Street. Even if we were able to stop it from the upstream flooding, what if the Patapsco floods? We have another hurricane and the Patapsco floods like Agnes, where we had about 13 feet of water on Lower Main Street. So there's no guarantee we can ever stop all the flooding. So at Lower Main, we are always going to have the potential of some flooding. Been a brief tour of the Ellicott City Watershed, starting at Main Street and South Rogers Avenue, showing the restrictive points, the culverts, the channels, what needs to be done to open the channels to get the water to the Patapsco, to take people out of harm's way on these Lower Main Street where the buildings cross over top of the Tiber Hudson River. I think the studies and the McCormick Taylor and the master planning group have come up with a good plan. Are we going to be able to eliminate flooding on Lower Main Street? I don't believe so. I mean, I don't think anybody will tell you they can. But we might even have flooding from a Patapsco up. But I believe this is a good solution to the problem we have here.
We haven't shown you a lot of the watershed. We've really focused on the lower part and the challenges that we face down here. A lot of the retention projects that are planned for upstream are extremely important. The conveyance improvement projects at the Hudson Bend and Ellicott Mills and the 108 culvert are extremely important for localized benefits to Upper Main Street. And then we have this very significant challenge down in Lower Main Street. And studies are telling us that there's very little that can be done to help alleviate flooding in Lower Main. But there's plenty of work that can be done that can improve the situation. We really want to reduce the peak flood rates, and we know that there are projects already on the books that can help us to do that. We're looking forward to working with the new administration and with our partners on really